Early every July, I have an odd ritual. It's really hot outside. I've been through 6 months of the year thus far. So I go back through all of my emails, everything in my inbox from January 1st onward. I keep those emails that are still relevant and I file them, but then everything else I hit delete, delete, delete. It's amazing how much stuff you can get rid of and never really miss it. And it's liberating. So I do that until, at least for one bright, shining moment, I have absolutely no emails in my inbox. It feels so great. I'm strangely lighter on my feet, but that's only the first part of my weird ritual. The second part is that I sit down and watch two old wonderful movies: It's a Wonderful Life with James Stewart and Donna Reed, and White Christmas with Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney, and that incredibly thin woman who's a great dancer, Vera Ellen. I read about her once. I thought maybe she was anorexic, but she wasn't. She's just very, very tiny. Both of those movies are old and corny, but I love them. I know every line, and when my kids were small, I used to force them to watch those movies with me, and I'm sure that's now part of their discussions with their therapists. But for me, watching them is like taking a warm bath. It just feels so good. On the one hand, they're so familiar and comfortable, but they're also so refreshing and hopeful. They're both about the same thing in a way, recognizing that whatever may be keeping us down or holding us back, it doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. What matters is rediscovering a life of hope, peace, joy, and love. And obviously, both movies are about Christmas. Of course, they're not about Christmas, strictly speaking, but they both take place in the days leading up to Christmas. Of course, the filmmakers did that on purpose. They were no dummies. They knew as well as we do that Christmas fills us with nostalgia, but also a sense of looking forward to life in a hopeful kind of way. The thing is, I watch those movies, not usually at Christmas time, but in July. So why do I do that? And why do I watch them after emptying out my email inbox? If I were to stretch out on the couch of a psychoanalyst and describe this, here's what I think the answer would be. I need to feel unburdened, emptied of stuff that is weighing me down. And at the same time, I need to see and hear signs of hope and peace and joy and love. And that's not just something I need during the month of December. Walking into a church with all the lovely Christmas decorations up and hearing carols being sung is wonderful and it truly helps. But if I'm honest with myself, I need it more often than once a year, whether that's every July or this time of year or maybe even every week. Truth is, I need to find that and live into that every day. And here's why. Having a huge pile of emails in my inbox is really neither here nor there in the big scheme of things. It's what all those emails represent for me. Now, for you, a lot of emails piling up might not be any big deal, but in one way or another, most of us carry around every day an accumulation of stuff, good stuff and bad stuff and everything in between stuff. But the stuff that feels to us like unfinished business or regrets or reminders that we haven't done something quite right, or bills that are coming due, or words that we said in a moment of frustration that we wish we would have never spoken, or that we typed and wish we never would have hit that send button. It's the accumulation of all that stuff clogging our emotional and spiritual inbox that, for me at least, keeps my time and attention focused on what could have been and what should have been. It pours my energy down a drain of if only. Now, I'm a big believer in accountability, and if I'm ever aware that I've done something wrong, I will work like a dog to make it right. But all the could have beens and should have beens and if onlys still have a way of accumulating, even though I know full well in my mind and heart and spirit that that's not a good thing for me to do. It's not good for me or for anyone who has to deal with me. It's not a healthy thing to pretend to the world that everything's just fine when it's not. because of all that stuff you're carrying around. And I also know that full well from what my faith tells me, if I believe that there's a God, and I do, and my concept of God is that God is a force that's infinitely more powerful than myself alone, and that knits all of us together, and that is so powerful because it's fueled by a bottomless reservoir of forgiveness, healing, and love, then carrying around any accumulation of old hurts and regrets and could have beens and should have beens and if onlys is completely unnecessary. It's not how we were created to live. It's not the abundant life Jesus always talked about. It's certainly not, as the prophet Malachi says, in any part of the covenant relationship that we have with God. We're not supposed to feel burdened, ever. Not on any day of the week, much less once or twice a year. That covenant Malachi talks about works in the opposite direction of hanging on to burdens. He says it's a lot like a refiner's fire, cleansing those impurities that linger in our systems. He calls it a soap, washing us clean of the grime of those things that make us feel less than or anxious or afraid. Which all sounds great, but how do we get to that place where we can truly feel unburdened and cleansed so that we can actually see and hear and touch the hope and peace and joy and love that is right in front of us every day? Because that is what Jesus means by having an abundant life. Now, I know it sounds old-fashioned, but I think it happens through ritual. We all have rituals that matter to us. Our sanctuary will be a lot more crowded than usual on Christmas Eve because so many people, whether they belong to Salem or they don't, find something deeply important in the ritual of hearing the words and the music telling the story about the birth of Christ. We ritualize all kinds of things. Any holiday you can name, certainly, but small rituals too. My dad, he had this really gross ritual of eating giblet gravy at Thanksgiving. It's gross because, do you know what giblets are? Look it up. I don't want to talk about it. But for my dad, it would not have been Thanksgiving if the giblets were absent. That mattered to him, and I really don't know why. Some weird childhood thing from the Great Depression, I guess. But humans create rituals for good reason. They help remind us of what really matters, of what's important enough to keep, and what's unnecessary enough to throw away, to delete. So rituals remind us of what our priorities are or should be. A good ritual empties all the junk from our inbox and points us back to what's healthy and soul enriching. A small, simple ritual like kissing your child as they walk out the door on the way to school is huge. And that little kiss, time stops for a moment and nothing else is more important. All the junk dissipates. That kiss affirms that you love them and care for them and want them to be their best and that you matter to each other no matter what that day might bring and whatever else is going on in the world. And if you were to ever forget that ritual, to not kiss your child on their way out the door, the chances are great that your child would rush back in to say, "Hey, you forgot something." That's what rituals do. And I can only speak for myself, but I need more of them. I'm not talking about emptying my email inbox and watching It's a Wonderful Life and White Christmas every day, but I need to see and hear and touch the hope, peace, joy, and love that God puts right in front of me to live into the covenant relationship I've been given by God and that knits me to you and to everyone else I meet, and to enjoy the gift of the abundant life that I know is all around me. It's all around all of us every day, not just in this season. So let's enjoy our rituals, the big ones and the small daily ones, and what they open up for us. And if that world that God makes real for us is not something you're seeing and hearing and touching today, you can join me in imagining and creating brand new rituals, and together we'll let go of our burdens and walk lightly in God's love.